Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today, not tomorrow, today we're going to talk about Distinctive Dummies hammer figures. Not everything Distinctive Dummies made, just the hammer figures. I don't know if we're going to get through all of them in one episode, or if I might have to split this into 2 episodes. I'll see just how far we get this time, and I'll make a decision. Hopefully we'll get through all of them in one episode. I don't like splitting things up because I don't know if you're going to tune in to see the second episode. I don't know. Let's try to get it all self-contained in one episode. I know it's been a few weeks since the previous episode. As we get closer to the end of the season, that's kind of the way it goes. The episodes get farther apart because I tend to have a lot going on this time of year. There's a lot of obstacles and difficulties to getting these episodes made, and that's one of the reasons I end the season in the spring, because it just wouldn't be practical to try to keep going deeper into the year. So please forgive the gap between episodes. There will probably be a gap between this episode and the next one, and then that penultimate episode and the final episode. So yes, we have 2 more episodes after this one, and then it's the end of the season, the 8th season of Basement of Horror. A lot's happened since our last episode. A lot of tumultuous things and goodbyes and things out there in the culture and out there in the world. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we start a war since the last episode? I think we did. I don't think that was going on when we had our last episode. That's how fast things can change in this world. One episode, there's no war. The next episode, there's a war. Also, closer to home, Shudder abruptly, unceremoniously canceled The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. And that matters to this show because I did a whole episode on The Last Drive-In. I was on The Last Drive-In last year, 2025. And I was surprised and very sad. No, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was surprised and very sad to see it go. I did watch that last episode along with everyone else. I watched it live on Shudder. And I had a lot of frustrated feelings towards Shudder. But I might talk more about that in the final episode of the year. But that was sort of another goodbye moment that's happened recently. Also, there's this new documentary called Capturing Bigfoot, which has apparently completely debunked the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film from the 60s. You know, the famous, when you think of Bigfoot, what are you seeing right now? That's the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And that's kind of shocking, even for someone who didn't really think it was a real Bigfoot. I lean very heavily to thinking it was a costume, but to have it confirmed is another matter. I hate that the question is gone, the mystery's gone. It's like finding out who really was the Thing at the end of John Carpenter's The Thing. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know for sure if Deckard was a replicant in Blade Runner. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know these things. And even though I was 80-90% sure the Patterson-Gimlin film was a hoax, I didn't want to know that for sure. I wanted the mystery to still be out there, just a little room for some doubt, some question. If I keep going, I'll start quoting the speech at the end of The Prestige. But that kind of sums up my feelings about it. I feel like that film was a beautiful magic trick, and the secret behind the trick has lasted all these years, and now someone just had to go behind the curtain and say, look how it's done, ha ha, and spoil the trick. So that is a documentary that I'm sure if you haven't heard of it by now, you'll hear more about it. But apparently, of course, I haven't seen it. Very few people have. But apparently it leaves no doubt. It shows you that costume in a dry run. They've got that costume practicing with it before shooting the film we all know. And apparently Bob Gimlin, who was one of the two people behind that film, is Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. Bob Gimlin is on the screen, on camera, and then he points over, and then you see that costume coming out of, or kind of in the trees, then it comes out of the trees, and it kind of turns around a little bit, and does some stuff. They're kind of trying it out to see how it looks. Well, so I'm surprised they didn't burn that footage, but that's a whole other discussion. But that's just another thing from my childhood that's kind of spoiled. another farewell, another thing to say goodbye to. And there have been so many goodbyes. I mean, I did a part of an episode about Bob Burns, a gorilla suit actor. Bob Burns passing away, and my friend Bobby Beeman passing away. And there have been other people in recent months who have passed away. And it just seems like a lot of things are going away. A lot of things that were part of our world, part of the nest we built around ourselves, part of the twigs and leaves that made up our nest, they're falling away, and the nest is falling away. We're just kind of flapping our wings, trying to stay aloft. Well, so it's a season of goodbyes, a season of endings, a season of things, pages turning, getting to the last page before the book is closed. And I might have more to say about that in our final episode of the year. I think that I haven't shot it yet, but I think there's going to be a theme there. Maybe. I mean, it could come together a different way, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm hoping to have some surprise second unit footage in that final episode. And we'll see. Maybe nothing will work out the way I want, and it'll be completely different. But I have plans for that final episode, so we'll just see. We'll see how it turns out. But for this episode, we're not going to be sad or disillusioned. In this episode, we're going to talk about something fun. I guess I think it's fun. I don't know. Maybe you don't. These custom figures made by Distinctive Dummies. There's a whole universe of these Hammer, Mego-style Hammer figures. So many. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to get to all these in one episode, but I'm going to try. I don't really want to split this into 2 episodes if I can help it. So it might be a long episode. Might be one of those 2.5-hour episodes. Well, let me talk a little bit about these figures and Distinctive Dummies. Now, we've done episodes on the Mego Hammer figures. In recent years, the modern iteration of the Mego Corporation has put out action figures based on Hammer Films characters like the Christopher Lee Dracula and the Peter Cushing Van Helsing. And so now maybe these Distinctive Dummies figures, perhaps some of the novelty is worn off. But I don't think so. I think those Mego figures are what they are, and they're over here on one side, and these are something different. We've also had a couple of Hammer figures from NECA, Christopher Lee Dracula and Peter Cushing Van Helsing, and I think a lot of people are very disappointed that NECA hasn't been more aggressive with that license and put out more characters. It's been a couple years, and they've just done those two. At Toy Fair this year, they didn't display any new Hammer characters. I think they're still producing those two, but they're not adding to it. They're not giving us Christopher Lee's Curse of Frankenstein creature or Peter Cushing's Baron Frankenstein, Oliver Reed's Werewolf, which is one everybody wants, Christopher Lee's Mummy, or the Phantom of the Opera, or the Zombie, or the Yeti, or Captain Kronos, or there's so many characters that they could put out. I'm talking about NECA, and they don't seem to be doing anything with that license, and that's sad. I don't know why. Maybe sales weren't that great on the Dracula and Van Helsing. I don't know. I think Mego stopped just a couple of figures shy of having a fairly definitive Hammer Mego collection. Of course, they could have gone several layers deeper, but I think they gave us a pretty good series in terms of the selection of characters. I wish they could have got that Gorgon out. I wish they would have made the Baron Frankenstein. They had the head sculpt. They showed that off. They never made the figure. I wish they would have given us an Oliver Reed Werewolf. We'll talk more about that situation later, I think. They could have given us a Yeti. I don't know. Maybe a Captain Kronos or something. That would have been great as a Mego figure, as I think we'll see. But if they could have just given us the Werewolf and Baron Frankenstein, I think people would have been happy just if they could have just gotten those two additional figures out. And then if they could have gone on to give us like Evil, a Frankenstein monster or something like that, or one or two others, that would be the cherry on top. I think the reason that Mego set feels less than definitive, it feels incomplete, is because they didn't get the Baron out and they didn't give us a werewolf. There's been talk that they could not give us a werewolf, but could have, should have, would have, whatever, they didn't. So in the Mego scale, this series of Distinctive Dummies figures is, at this point, the definitive Mego style Hammer collection. The thing is, it's not licensed. These are custom figures. These are unlicensed, unauthorized, custom figures. And I normally don't collect custom toys. It's not my thing. There are a lot of things that are kind of semi-licensed or semi-bootleg or semi-custom. They kind of bridge both worlds. They're sort of licensed, sort of not. They've got a license, like Distinctive Dummies put out some Hammer figures that had a license from the makeup artist or the estate of the makeup artist, but that person didn't own the rights to those characters, but they owned the rights theoretically to the character design. So that was sort of like semi-licensed, kind of fudging it. And right now there's a crowdfunding campaign for some Kolchak Night Stalker figures, and they're supposedly licensed, but they're licensed based on the book, The Night Stalker, not the TV movies or the TV series. And so they don't have Darren McGavin's likeness. They don't have any actor likenesses. They're based on the book. Well, but not really, because apparently Kolchak in the book doesn't look the same as he looks in the show. So again, they're sort of semi-licensed. They're kind of, technically they have a license, but not the right license. And they're being crowdfunded. So are those real toys, or are they something else? And I think it is a different genre. Like, these toys are a different collecting genre. They're not like those Mego toys I was talking about. They're not licensed. They're not mass produced in a factory. I think their heads are made of resin. These days, a lot of these custom toys are 3D printed. The heads are 3D printed. Sometimes the whole thing is 3D printed. I was just looking at a Jaws Bruce shark with like the mechanical parts, showing there's a company selling that, but it's 3D printed, and they want hundreds of dollars for it, but it's 3D printed. Instead of selling the file for $20 and you print it yourself. So that's a thing. There's 3D printed custom model kits and figures. I don't like that. I collect factory-made toys because they're toys. I'm a toy collector. And even now, when toys are not made for kids anymore, not really, at least there's still a possibility that a child could see a NECA Dracula on a shelf at Target and say, I want that, and take that home and play with it. It's possible. It can happen. Or the Mego Hammer Dracula. Kid could see that hanging on a peg hook at Target, even though Mego, right there on the card, it says it's made for older, I don't know what is this, like 18 and up or 16 and up or something like that. Still, a kid could take that and play with it and have childhood memories of Van Helsing and Dracula fighting. If a kid knew what those movies were. But, he could have a monster kid dad that introduces him to that stuff. So at least there's the possibility. And as long as there's a possibility of that happening, then I can think of it as a toy, and it pushes the buttons that I need in order to want to collect it. But when you take that possibility away, like with a custom toy, then, or with something, or with a multi-$100 very high-end action figure that's hundreds of dollars, caustic plastic, Medicom, Hot Toys. Those are not going to be played with by kids. Obviously, they're too expensive, so they're not really toys. And the reason I collect toys, it has to do with the nature of them being playthings, mass-produced, made for kids to play with. And when you take that away, they become much less attractive. I'm much less interested in whatever it is. So all that said, it's kind of a big deal that I went into these Distinctive Dummies Hammer figures as big as I did. Because I have just about all of them. There's a contest prize that I don't have, but I think I have every other one. When it's so alien to what I collect, I think it says a lot about the quality of these figures, that they're so good that I could put that aside and kind of forget that these are not, strictly speaking, true toys. They're not made for kids. They're not sold at retail stores. They're not made in a factory. They're handmade in low numbers. They're basically dolls. If you collect, or someone who collects designer dolls, they're handmade in someone's house, and they go on sale at a certain time, and you've got to jump in there and buy it, and then they sell out. And they might cost hundreds or thousands of dollars, but they're a doll. Maybe they're wax or china or some more modern material. I say China, the material, not the country. There might be a china doll or a wax doll. And that, I think this is what these are. I see them that way. It's doll collecting. They're dolls. Designer dolls. Boutique dolls. Made in low numbers. Limited editions. And when they were still being produced, they went on sale at a certain time, a certain date, and usually they sold out in one day, and when they were gone, they were gone. So I see these more as something from the world of doll collecting than action figure collecting, because I associate action figure collecting with stores, with Target, Walmart, or back in the day, Toys R Us, Children's Palace, Venture, Kmart. Enough of all that. What is this company, Distinctive Dummies? It is the brainchild of the company owner, Martin Cage. Martin Cage is the mastermind behind Distinctive Dummies. Martin lives in Bangkok. He's originally from Banbury, Oxfordshire. But for the entire time, as far as I know, that he's been doing these custom figures, he's been in Bangkok. So this whole operation is coming from Bangkok. I don't know if he assembles and paints the figures in Bangkok, or if he's got, because I know he has people who help. He has sculptors, he has card art designers, he has other people working with him, but I don't think they're geographically where he is. So I don't know what sort of worldwide network he's got, but he lives in Bangkok and he makes all the decisions. He started Distinctive Dummies in 2010, and his first offering was Hammer. He launched the company with Hammer figures, but not these. He launched the company, Distinctive Dummies, with 12-inch, 1/6 scale Hammer figures. And I remember seeing those. They got all the way to this sleepy little town in Missouri. I went to a local toy show, and I saw his 12-inch Hammer figures for sale there. And that was the first time I was aware of Distinctive Dummies. I thought, what's this company? But I didn't like them. I didn't like those early 12-inch ones. The heads were too small, the shoulders were too broad, and they had a kind of homemade look. They didn't thrill me. I didn't look at those and say, oh, I have to collect those. And they were kind of expensive, and I thought, nah. But it's nice someone's doing something like this. That's cool. Now, as time went on, and he improved the sculpting, the design, everything got better and better until the figures he was putting out were really good and very impressive. And he branched out from Hammer into Vincent Price and Universal and all kinds of other properties. And I think the 12-inch doll that really made me take the plunge was Butch, Vincent Price from Theater of Blood as the hairdresser Butch. That was my first Distinctive Dummies purchase. I still have him. And I did an episode before about Distinctive Dummies where I showed some of those 12-inch figures that I have. And some of those I sold, and I think in the episode I talked about the fact that I was going to sell some of them. So this is the second time we've talked about Distinctive Dummies over the course of an entire episode. I brought them up, talking about the Mego figures and things like that. So I started getting into those 12-inch Distinctive Dummies figures, starting with Butch. Still have Butch. I love that doll. No one's ever going to make a licensed doll like that. The only way it's ever going to happen is unlicensed, custom to someone like Distinctive Dummies. Now, you've also seen on the show some of Matt Jaycox's beautiful custom figures, and he will give those to me as gifts. He doesn't sell his figures, and his figures are beautiful. They're works of art, and that's a different thing. An artist who makes one figure at a time, doesn't sell them. He's like Geppetto in his workshop making these little masterpieces. That's a different thing than a custom, like Brent's Dolls or something like that, that puts out a run of figures like Distinctive Dummies does and sells them to the public. It's different. There's a whole world of custom figure makers. That's a whole universe that you can explore. On this show, you've seen Matt Jaycox's figures, and the occasional thing, maybe I've got some Shriek of the Mutilated custom figures because that's a favorite film of mine. So every now and then, I'll buy a custom figure because it pushes a button, strikes a fancy of some kind. But this is the only time I've gone whole hog and seriously collected every character in an exhaustive line of custom toys. So here I am, taking the plunge, collecting Distinctive Dummies because of that Butch figure. That's the one that got me into it. And then in 2013, Martin Distinctive Dummies releases their first Mego-style 8-inch action figure. And just like he launched his 12-inch line with Hammer, he launches his 8-inch line with Hammer. And he releases the Christopher Lee Dracula, Christopher Lee Frankenstein's Creature, Oliver Reed Werewolf, and Christopher Lee Mummy. The line continued all the way through 2020 when COVID hit, and the final figure he released was Alice from Plague of the Zombies in 2020. And you'll see her towards the end of this episode, or if there's a part 2, you'll see her in part 2. So between 2013 and 2020, that's 7 years. That's a long run, and several different sets of figures and some individual figures that were not part of a set. There was a contest. I don't remember the details, but he made some 2-packs, not Shakur, 2-packs with 2 figures in it for this contest. And I know one of them was Peter Cushing as John Banning and Christopher Lee as the Mummy from the 1959 Hammer Mummy. And there might have been some other ones. I think there were. But the one that I kind of wanted was that one, because though that John Banning figure wasn't represented anywhere else in the line, that was unique to this contest. I didn't win the contest. I don't know if it was a raffle. I think it was like a raffle or something like that. It was for charity. So that's whatever he made for that contest, those are the only ones I don't have. And I think the only character that was unique to that contest was John Banning, Peter Cushing's John Banning from The Mummy. And every other character in those contest prizes was represented elsewhere in the series. He was produced as figures that you could buy. But the one that was unique to that contest was the John Banning figure, and I don't have that. Kind of like with Sideshow, they released a silver screen Son of Frankenstein, 12-inch. And it was for a contest, and the only way you could get it was through the contest. And so everyone's 12-inch Sideshow Universal Monsters collection is incomplete because you can't get that silver screen Son of Frankenstein. I mean, there's a couple out there, but for the most part, you're not gonna get them. Some people have them. You're not gonna have it because it's very hard to get. I don't know what they're going for these days, but it's kind of rotten when companies, big or small, do that. If you're a completist and you're trying to build a set, and there's 1 or 2 figures that are contest prizes, or some other weird thing, like they made a small run for a trade show, so they're legitimate, but then they're only at that trade show or something like that. It's always difficult to deal with. So I'll probably never get that John Banning. That's the only real hole in my Distinctive Dummies Hammer collection. When these Hammer figures started coming out, these 8-inch ones, I didn't jump on it. It wasn't until the Curse of the Werewolf, the last one, that I thought, okay, I need to buy these. I don't know why I hesitated, but for some reason I liked them, but I didn't feel that push until I saw the Curse of the Werewolf. And I really love that movie. I love that werewolf. And there had never been a toy of any kind based on that werewolf, and not a legitimate one. X1X. Do I have that poster? Yeah, I think it's behind me, right? X1X made some Curse of the Werewolf stuff. But that was unlicensed. It was knockoff stuff. There had never been a proper Curse of the Werewolf toy. So, and this obviously wasn't proper either. It was unlicensed. But when I saw that, I said, oh, that looks great. I just have to have that. And once I bought that, then I said, well, I need the other 3 now. So I think it's high time we start seeing some of these. And here it is. This is when these toys were shipped to you. They had your name on it. And you see that's got the initials for Curse of the Werewolf. And it's got my name. And so the figure was in this bubble wrap. So you're not going to see them in the bubble wrap for the most part. Although, I should have said this at the start. I have one, the Barbara Shelley figure, that has never been removed from her clamshell. She still has her original bubble wrap on her. And if we make it that far, I will open her up on camera and take her bubble wrap off. So even though it's a custom toy, still, I'm opening a toy. We did that with the fast food premiums a few weeks ago. So we'll do that here as well. I will actually, for the first time, open this toy. I'll be exposed to the outside air for the first time since it was made. The Barbara Shelley figure. That'll be the last one we look at. But all the rest of them, they've all been removed from their bubble wrap. And this is the way it came. And I've seen other Distinctive Dummies collectors who keep these things. I'm not the only idiot who does that. Other Distinctive Dummies collectors keep these little bubble wrap pieces with the labels on them like that. And I see he spelled my name wrong, of course. But one Curse of the Werewolf for Raymond Castile. So it's particularly, especially my Curse of the Werewolf. There are others like it, but this one's mine. What else can I show you here? Oh, there it is. That's for the Curse of Frankenstein. And you notice how he says Migo. The whole idea here was that it was copying the Migo style. This one's for Victor Frankenstein. He never did learn to spell my name. But this wasn't special for me. I mean, everyone who ordered these things got them this way, with these personalized labels and these bags like this. I almost said okay, but that doesn't count. So we have a little drinking game. When I say okay, you got to take a drink, but I caught myself. Let's see what we have in here. Finally, we're going to see these toys. It's been a while. Talking. And maybe I should now get this box out of the way. Here we go. That is the original Distinctive Dummies Christopher Lee Horror of Dracula figure. The first one. He made some other Chris Lee Draculas, but that's the first one he made. Can't see very much of him, and if I start taking these out of these bubbles, this will be a 6-hour long video, so I'm not going to do that. I got a lot of figures to get through. I just got to do it. I got to do what I can. It's very different from Migo's interpretation. You can debate which you prefer. I think the Migo one looks more toy-like. Some might say toyetic. That's a nice artwork there. I think the Migo one looks like a toy, and that's good. I like that. The head's a little bigger. It's a little oversized for the body. It looks like a Migo. So now we know if Migo made hammer figures, what would they look like? Well, we actually have them. But when these were made, they didn't exist. Those official Migo hammer figures did not exist. And these are the characters that were in this first series. Classics of the horror film. Yeah, these are numbered 00 of 50. So 00 of 50, and I think 3 of these 4 are 00 of 50. Only 50 made. And they're 00 because that's not the first ones he made. This is the last one. So the first one was 01, and the last set was 00. So technically, I guess 51. But I think that, in fact, what I got, because I waited until the Curse of the Werewolf came out, that what I got was, in fact, not the first, but the last ones. The last ones that went out the door. Oh, you know what? I thought this was Horror of Dracula. This is Dracula, Prince of Darkness. I didn't know that. Dracula, Prince of Darkness. I thought it was Horror of Dracula. What's that artwork from, though? Is that Prince of Darkness? I thought that artwork was Horror of Dracula. So I learned something new. I mean, Horror of Dracula, he doesn't have a red lining. Does he? I don't think so. I think that came in with Prince of Darkness. So that makes sense. And also the red eyes like that. I think that's... I don't know. I think he had that in horror as well, but I think it was more accentuated later. Anyway, so it's a Prince of Darkness. It's not Horror of Dracula. It's Prince of Darkness. Okay. And it's even on the back. It specifies Prince of Darkness. It's not just Dracula. It's from a particular movie, which you see with licensed toys all the time, like Michael Myers from Halloween 2, because that's a different license than Halloween 78. So instead of marketing the Michael Myers figure as just Halloween, it's Halloween 2. But with an unlicensed toy, why not just say it's Dracula? I don't know, but it's specifically Dracula, Prince of Darkness. What else we got? I'm trying to look at these in order of release. This is The Mummy. Look at that. That's beautiful. Now, when these came out, Brent's dolls wasn't, I don't know if he was making figures then or not, but he wasn't making them like this. And of course, Mego wasn't making them. No one was making Hammer figures, but even Hammer or no Hammer, just the quality of these. That's why I hadn't really gotten into custom figures before these. But these things were so professional, they looked like they should be hanging on a peg hook at Target. They look like, in quotes, real toys. I think they're just so good that they tricked my brain into thinking they're real toys. And so that feeling I get when I look at an authentic vintage Mego or Azrak Hamway or Tomlin figure, I can look at these and get that same feeling because they are so well made. They look like, well, they look better than what Mego would have done, but they look like a high-end, not high-end, they look like a modern 8-inch figure based on these characters. If a company, Mego or otherwise, if they got a license for these things in the 21st century and made figures based on these characters, you would expect them to look like this. And when Mego finally did do just that, well, it's interesting to compare them. I think in some cases some of the Mego offerings looked better. In other cases, the Distinctive Dummies versions look better. They're different. They are different. The Distinctive Dummies figures have smaller heads. The Mego figures have more of a, like I said, a doll-like look, with like the proportions. They have a bigger head. They look more like toys, which is good. I like that. But there's no comparison with the card art. I mean, this is what the Mego figures should have had for card art. These posters. This is the posters from the movie. That's not the UK or US poster. I'm not sure. I think a lot of these are French posters. But that's what you should have on a thing like this. You should have the poster art. And Mego had some bizarre choices for artwork on some of those cards. Really, really weird. And their excuse was, well, that's what the licensor wanted, and they can say that. They can say that. Anyway, there's the back. And they're different colors. See, that's blue and that's red. So there's a lot of thought that goes into this. The whole package is very well done. You know, it's not just the toy, the whole thing, the whole presentation. It looks very professional. They look like real toys. And when you hold them in your hand, they feel like real toys. Now here is the first Curse of Frankenstein creature. As you saw earlier, there's another one. And we'll look at him again in a minute. Christopher Lee as Frankenstein's creature. Really nice outfit. When Mego made him, the Mego version almost looks like a silver screen figure. It looks kind of black and white. It's kind of strange. I don't know why Mego did that. And there is the back. It's green in this case. This is 00. Mummy is 26 of 50. So we got 0, 0, 0, 0, 26. The final one in that first series. Oh, he's got a lot of bubble wrap in there. Got some crud too. This is my favorite. Well, it's certainly one of my favorites of the line, if not my favorite. There's one other that might be my favorite, but this is Curse of the Werewolf. It's got that beautiful French poster art. Or is it Belgian? Is it a Belgian poster or a French poster? I think it's France, but it could be Belgian. I actually have that original poster. I have a real, not a reprint or a copy, but I have the actual vintage poster. Not the one that's hanging behind me now. That's an X1X. But there's Christopher Lee. There's Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed's Werewolf from Curse of the Werewolf. Lots of blood. Very bloody figure. And that's the first one I bought. And he's got the bubble wrap to kind of hold him in place because the inserts that most of these inserts that you see I put in there. I think Distinctive Dummies did later include some inserts in some of them, but most of these are third-party inserts that I bought and put in place. But it wasn't going to work with him because he was so thick. I think that was the problem. He just wouldn't fit into the insert. So I've got bubble wrap in there. That's a pretty good likeness of Oliver Reed. It really captures that character. And Distinctive Dummies made another version of that, a different head sculpt to make another version of this figure later. I don't think it's as good. I think this is better. I think this first one's better. The back is yellow and orange. Oh, that's interesting. What is the... I don't think it's 0, 0, is it? It's 15. So, the Werewolf's 15 of 50. Mummy's 26 of 50. And Dracula and Frankenstein's creature are 0, 0 of 50. I think it just depended on when I bought them. I bought the Werewolf first. But again, I don't think 0, 0 means they're first. I think actually means they're last. They're like a 51st set. There might have been one that Martin had set aside for himself or for posterity or for the archives or whatever. Because I remember communicating to him, like, okay, I want these, but if I'm going to get into them, then I really want all of them. And by then, Dracula and Frankenstein had sold out. There were still some mummies left, and he just released this Werewolf. So I think he reached into his archive or his personal stash to give me the Dracula and the Frankenstein creature. There's an issue with Oliver Reed that I hear the reason Mego couldn't make him, that Werewolf, is because there's some problem with the likeness of Oliver Reed, some problem with his estate. And yet, well, he doesn't really have an estate. I think that's the problem, that they don't know, there's no one to buy a license from. Although that didn't stop people with Peter Cushing. I don't think he's got an estate either, and that ended up in court because Rogue One used his likeness to create a CGI Peter Cushing, but they didn't get anyone's permission because there was no one to get permission from. And we've certainly had Peter Cushing figures. Mego made some. NECA made one. There was a Grand Moff Tarkin figure. I guess that was Hasbro or whoever's. I don't keep track of who's making Star Wars figures these days. I think it's Hasbro. Yeah, it's Hasbro. So we had some official Peter Cushing figures. So how are they arranging that likeness if there's no one to negotiate a likeness with, the rights, no one to sell you the rights? But apparently that's the situation with Oliver Reed. However, Trick or Treat Studios made a licensed Hammer Curse of the Werewolf mask. And that's nothing but his likeness. That's his head. There was also a rubber ducky that was licensed Hammer Curse of the Werewolf, but there's no likeness in a rubber ducky, of course. But I would think the Trick or Treat mask, that's nothing but his likeness. It's his head. It's his face. So I take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. Just like when they say that they couldn't do better with the card art on the Mego Hammer figures. Okay, that's what they say, but I take all that with a pinch of salt. But apparently, that's an obstacle in making a Curse of the Werewolf figure. And NECA might encounter an obstacle if they ever try to make one. But looks like they're not doing anything with that license anyway. Let me put some of these back. I showed you this earlier. Sometimes Distinctive Dummies would reissue a character, but in a slightly different form, especially if that character had different looks within the same movie. And this is still Christopher Lee's Frankenstein creature from Curse of Frankenstein, but he has at least 3 different looks in that movie, and Distinctive Dummies made all 3. We saw the one, that was the first one. This, I think he made this in 2017, so this came late. And I'll double check that later, but I think this was 2017. It's pretty much the same as the other one, except for that head. That is the damaged head. After the creature is shot through the eye, and Baron Frankenstein performs surgery on its brain and brings it back to life. Instead of the 4 characters on the back, we have a photo of Peter Cushing from the movie. Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't have the monster in it, but it does. It obviously, it's mostly a picture of Peter Cushing as the Baron, but the monster's there. He's bandaged up, though, but he's there. And what do we have there at the bottom? What is that? Oh, it's just this is number 14 of 60. It is increasing the number there. But that's odd. He's got a little creature head, Christopher Lee creature head down there. I thought maybe that was Martin at first. Like, you know how Mego has Marty's face in the corner. I thought maybe at some point Martin was putting his face down there, but no, that's the Christopher Lee creature. Now that I can see it up close. Oh, yeah. I don't think Martin wants to look like that. Let's just take another look at him. He's pretty neat. I remember Martin. I mentioned Marty. That's Marty Abrams from Migos. The Marty I was talking about who puts his face on the back of the card. I thought, well, maybe Martin Cage was doing that. But no, that's the Christopher Lee monster down there. But I think Martin Cage prefers this version over the standard version. I prefer the standard version over the shaved, damaged version. But it's nice to have this one too. And I think that's from 2017. These two, I'm not sure when these came out. I think it was 2014, because if not, then there would have been a gap between Series 1 and Series 2, Series 1 in 2013, Series 2 in 2015. That seems like a long gap. So I think that's probably when these were made. We just looked at the creature from Curse of Frankenstein. Now this is Peter Cushing. This is our first Peter Cushing doll as Dr. Victor Frankenstein. And you can see there's a little difference in the card art for this one. We don't have a movie poster. We have original art. I don't think these Peter Cushing likenesses are as good as the Christopher Lee likenesses. I almost said Christopher Reeve again. I don't know why I'm doing that. I think Migo's Peter Cushing likeness, even though it's very doll-like, I think it's better. I think it looks more like Cushing. And this is what's on the back. I would have rather seen that on the front or something like that. Photo of Cushing and this drawing. I think the idea here is they're going for kind of like the Azraq Hanway monsters with the little the hand-drawn portraits. You know, on the Azraq Hanway monsters, they have the portraits on the sides. I think that's kind of where he was going with that. Well, before I say anything more, let me look at Van Helsing. Here's Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. Much more elaborate costume. I think that head sculpt's a little better. I mean, it might be the same. I don't think it is. No, it's not. It's a different head sculpt. But I think that's a little better. I still prefer the Migo Van Helsing. I think that's captures Peter Cushing a little more than this. And you can see there's original art once again instead of movie poster art. Those are the tools of the trade, I assume, if I remember correctly, like a stake and a hammer, maybe candlesticks, perhaps? I'm not sure. I'll take a better look in a second. Not candlesticks, candle holders. Candlestick holders. And that's what's on the back. That's a nice image from... Now that is from Horror of Dracula. Number 3 of 50. And can I tell what's in that little package? It looks like candlestick holders, isn't it? Yeah, it's the... I thought maybe it was a stake and a hammer. No, it's the metal candlestick holders that he uses to make the cross at the end of the movie. And Migo produced an accessory like that for their Van Helsing. Not at first. I think at first he had like a little pick or something. I don't know. It was kind of, I remember it was kind of off, kind of weird. But then they gave him the candlestick holders. Now, about this artwork, I don't like it. And that's one of the reasons I didn't, even though it has the name of the artist on the package, I don't want to name him and say I don't like his artwork. So I won't name him, but I don't like the artwork. A lot of the non-Hammer Distinctive Dummies figures have artwork that looks like that, unfortunately. And that's one of the things that makes the Hammer line stand out. The use of the poster art. I think that's a big deal. It makes them look much, much more professional. It makes them look like real toys, like something that could theoretically be in a retail store. And this original art, it's just not good enough. It looks handmade. It looks homemade. It looks like, it just doesn't look professional. It doesn't look like a manufactured toy. You know, you wouldn't have that on a toy at Target. And that breaks the illusion. That's why I don't like it, because these are so successful at creating the illusion of real factory-made toys. Like some actual big company got a Hammer license and put these out in the, who knows what era it would have been, but in the 21st century when they were actually made, and then put them in Target and Walmart. Mego later actually did that for real. But when these came out, Mego had not done that. I don't think the new Mego company had even formed yet. Mego had not returned. So it was a nice fantasy to look at these and say, what if? But when you see the homemade artwork, it breaks the illusion. You can't have that fantasy. Then you say, oh, this is just something someone made. I want to have the illusion that these are factory-made toys. And I think my friend Matt, who makes those beautiful custom, one-of-a-kind custom figures that I've shown here, I think he kind of has that sensibility too, that he wants the illusion that a real toy company made these. And he's got a whole history of this, dare I say, imaginary toy company. Oh, he's not going to like that. No, it's a real toy company. It's not imaginary. He has this whole history of this imaginary toy company that made all this weird stuff. And it's like a kayfabe kind of thing. But you can't have that make-believe history if they don't look like factory-made toys. So I wish all of the Hammer figures had poster art to uphold that illusion. I always prefer that poster art. I mean, if you had some top-level industrial illustrator working for you, okay, that's fine. But I will say some of those Mego cards, in their own way, look horrible. Some of them just, they don't look professional either, but in a different way. And those were in real stores. But that's enough for about the card art, so I've said my piece. I don't like it. I love the poster art. I wish they all had that. I think enough years have passed. I can look at these in a historical context, and I don't need to try to glaze anybody. I can look at these as a piece of history, and I can talk about what I like and don't like. I love the toys. I love the poster art on the cards that use that. I don't like the hand-drawn art. And I don't like a number of the Mego card choices. I think some of those are just baffling. The Mego Hammer figures, some of the choices made there is just baffling, and I do not buy the excuse that, well, we had to do it that way. The licensor wanted it that way. I mean, NECA, their two Hammer figures don't have that problem, so I'm very critical about the card art or the box art or the package art on everything. I think toy packaging is part of the toy. The package is part of the toy. And not everyone thinks that way. I think that way, and they're my toys that I'm buying for my collection, so it's my show, so my opinion matters here. And I always appreciate it when, well, like Matt, he feels that same way, that the toy package is as important as the toy. As a kid, the packaging, of course, was what drew my eye to the toy in the first place. If the packaging wasn't good, then I probably wouldn't even, I don't know if I would even pay attention to the toy. And that's one of the things about real toys. They're made for kids. They're made not just for kids to play with, but for kids to want to play with, for kids to see it in the store, or see it in the commercials, that I want that, and to get their parents to buy it. And when you take that element away, you lose something. And when you have a toy made for adults, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the necessity to appeal to a child with the card art. It doesn't have the necessity to be safe for a child with the way it's constructed. It's a different world. Everything about it changes. When you shift from making a toy for kids to making it for adults, everything shifts. Shifts in a direction I don't like. Now here we have the second series that I think came out over the course of 2015 and 2016. So I don't know what order they came out in, but I think the first ones were introduced in 2015 and the last ones were introduced in 2016. So it bridged those 2 calendar years. But this is the second series, and it includes Baron Meinster from Brides of Dracula, the Yeti from The Abominable Snowman. In the US, it's The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. And the monster from Frankenstein and the monster from Hell, and the main zombie from Plague of the Zombies. Mego made a Plague of the Zombies figure, but I maybe I'm forgetting something, but I don't think Mego made a monster from Hell or a Baron Meinster. No, they didn't make those. And I know they didn't make a Yeti, because I kept tell them, make a Yeti, make a Yeti, make a Yeti. They didn't make a Yeti. I was surprised Distinctive Dummies came out with a Yeti that quickly. I was pleasantly surprised. I felt like that was a sign Martin really knew what he was doing. He had his finger on the pulse of something. That for the second series, you would think that'd be like one of the last ones he'd make. No, second series, bam, there's a Yeti. But we'll save him for a minute. Let's look at Baron Meinster from Brides of Dracula. We'll look at him as best we can, because we can't see very much of him. But that's a nice sculpt, to the extent you can see it. It is a nice sculpt. I've seen other attempts at him that were not very good. That does look like him. And yes, that is poster art, although the way the title is written is different, because I think the poster is a French poster, and then it doesn't say in English Brides of Dracula on it. So you can see there's an issue with this thing. Obviously, something's wonky here. You can't really see very much of him. He's got a really nice cape, but he's got a nice head sculpt, but something's not quite right. And that's the back. This is 37 of 60. I mean, he really is a nice Baron Meinster. That sculpt is very nice, but why does he look like this? He's kind of a mess, isn't he? And it's because, at this point, Distinctive Dummies, Martin, and this is why I remember him saying this, because other people were complaining about the costume. It's very puffy. It covers him up. It doesn't really fit him. It's too big for him. It's too bulky. And it looks kind of ridiculous with the cape up like that, and it's silly. Martin thought that every part of the costume should be represented. So he should have a full shirt, and a full vest, and a full jacket, and a full cape. That he, if I remember his words when he was talking about this online, that he was sort of shortchanging the customer if he didn't give them all of that, every layer of the costume. But then you end up with a figure that looks like that, like what you just saw. You've got to cheat some things. When you're working with this small scale, you've got to cut some corners to create this illusion, the illusion that it's a multi-layered costume. So maybe the shirt, there's not really a shirt underneath. Maybe it's just the collar and this area, and that's it. Or just the cuffs sticking out, but there's no shirt underneath. And the vest, maybe in the shirt are one piece. Maybe the back of the vest or the shirt is made of a thinner material. Things like that. You've got to kind of cheat on some stuff to keep the costumes from puffing out and looking silly, to keep them looking in scale with the rest of this 8-inch toy. And that's tricky. I think Martin got better with that as he went along, but at this stage, it was a hard lesson to learn, because I remember online there were a lot of criticisms of this figure. Not the sculpt, the head or any sculpt, just that the costume didn't look right, obviously. And that's why, because every layer of that costume is represented. He's got, I guess in there somewhere, I guess he's got a full shirt and a full vest and a full jacket, and everything there's too much there. Too many layers, and it needed to be compacted somehow, and things needed to be combined to make it all lay flat against his body and look elegant like it should, instead of puffed out. Now let's look at the monster from hell. He's cool. Why do I feel like Mego made this? Did Mego make one of these? I don't remember. I didn't check. I don't think they did. I could be wrong. I don't know. I didn't check beforehand to double check what characters Mego made. I know they didn't make a Yeti. They didn't make a werewolf. They didn't make a Baron Frankenstein. I don't think they made Monster from Hell. There's David Prowse as the Monster from Hell. That is a good likeness. I think that's a very good likeness. That really captures him. He looks sad. I like how several of these figures look sad. That's how they should look. They should look sad. Sad and sympathetic. He's got a lot of hair, but I like that. That's how Mego, they're supposed to be Mego style. That's how a 1970s Mego would have done it. They would have given him too much hair like that. They would have given him this big poof of hair. I like that. I like the choices that were made here. He really does look like a Mego Monster from Hell. Doesn't look like a Hot Toys Monster from Hell. Doesn't look like a Caustic Plastic Monster from Hell. Doesn't look like a NECA Monster from Hell. He looks like a retro style Mego Monster from Hell. There's the back. Whoop. I think all of these backs for this series are all red. So he didn't do the color-coded system for these, where the color kind of reflected the character. This is 33 of 60. Oh, he's cute. And yeah, the The artwork, even though this looks kind of cartoony, that is some kind of poster art. I'm sure that that is from a poster. Now let's look at the Plague of the Zombies. Zombie. And this is one Mego did make. Mego made a zombie. That's pretty good. I remember thinking that the Mego one is also pretty good. That is poster art. I think I like this one a little more than the Mego one. The Mego one's good too, but I think I like this. I think I like this one more. And once again, I've got bubble wrap in there instead of an insert because the way his costume is designed, his legs wouldn't fit into the insert. And I think that's the case with almost all these. Baronmeister has an insert. But most of these, they don't. I didn't put an insert in there because it wouldn't fit. The figure wouldn't fit. Okay. Oh, now you gotta take a drink. All right. This might be my favorite of the line. It's either that Curse the Werewolf that I showed you or it's this one. This is the Yeti from the Abominable Snowman. In England, it's just the Abominable Snowman. In the US, it's the Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. They felt like they had to add that little bit to the title. Just like Horror of Dracula in the US was simply Dracula in the UK. There's the Yeti. Says so right there. The Abominable Snowman. And that's poster art. Aww. Really nice. Really nice fur costume and beautiful big feet. This one's especially impressive because you see so little of this character in the movie. It's one of my favorite Hammer films for sure. The character, the monster, is so mysterious. Oh, by the way, that I'm assuming that is not from a poster. I could be wrong. That looks like it was hand drawn, but it could be from a poster. I don't know. I think all the other ones are. But that's definitely from a poster, the front. And this is number 53 of 60 because it's a bigger run. Instead of 50, it's 60. In the movie, you only see the Yeti at the very end, and you just barely see his face. He's in the shadows, and he steps forward into the light, into a shaft of light, and you just sort of see the top half of his head. And you just get a brief look at the top of his face, and you sort of see it as it's coming into frame. And then you see some long shots of Yetis that are silhouetted, they're in shadow. And you see the arm of a dead one. There are behind the scenes images of these costumes. The standing Yetis have different faces than the one that walks into frame. So the makeup wasn't the same. And then there was a big dummy for the dead Yeti that I think the plan was originally to show more of that, but in the finished film you don't see hardly any of it. You see its arm lying there, and that's about it. And then in another scene you see a living Yeti's hand reach into a tent. So you don't really see much of them in the movie. Behind the scenes, there are some behind the scenes photos of what those costumes look like, but the full body costumes are not the same makeup as the close-up. That was a different makeup. So it's, I think Martin and the sculptor, and I think his name's, let me just get this right, I think it's Steve Johnson. Steve Thomas? I knew it was some, did I say that before? Steve Thomas, yeah, okay. Steve Thomas is the name of the sculptor. I don't know if I said Johnson or Thomas before. Steve Thomas is the person who I think sculpted all of these. Steve Thomas. Not Steve Johnson, Steve Thomas. And he did a great job of capturing this character, because when I immediately say, oh yeah, that's it, that's the Yeti from the movie, even though you barely see his face at all. That's it. That's what it looks like. That's a great action figure representation of this wise old Yeti. This benevolent Yeti that just wants to be left alone. Even though you barely see him in the film, you barely see his face. When you do see it, it looks like that. So they did a great job of bringing this character to life in a way that makes you immediately recognize, yes, that's the monster from the movie, even though you barely see it in the movie. So it's a great Yeti figure. Not that there are that many Yeti figures out there. Tomland obviously made a very famous Abominable Snowman figure. That's a favorite toy of mine. But in the Mego scale, at least, this is probably the most authentic looking. If you're going to, compare it to the legend of the Yeti, the mythology of the Yeti, it's probably the most authentic and serious looking 8-inch Yeti I've ever seen. The Tomlin one, it's Ernest Borgnine from The Devil's Reign with big pointy ears, and it's awesome. I love that toy, but it's not an authentic looking representation of the legendary Yeti. This is, and I wish Mego had made one. They could have just ideally just licensed this sculpt, really, and just mass produce it, but they didn't do that. And I'm very happy that Distinctive Dummies put the Yeti out so early in the line. They didn't wait till the end like you might have assumed for what would be kind of an obscure character like that. They got him out very early because Martin, I guess, recognized this as a very popular character, and it's more iconic, I think, than people would imagine. So he needed to get out there soon. It's like a deep cut that you would have thought would have been in like the 4th series. Instead, it's in the 1st series. Before we go on, I'm going to put some of these away, and then we'll see how much further we can get in this episode. We've cleaned out the first 2 waves of Distinctive Dummies hammer figures, and now we're going to look at the 2-packs. Let's see, how many of these are there? Oh boy. I think this is chronologically, this is the first one. No, it's not. Okay. There we go. No. That's not it. Got a lot of these. Okay, finally. I think this has got to be. This is, okay. So in 2015, now that second series was 2015, 2016. And then this 2-pack came out in 2015. So this is kind of like part of that second wave. This is Curse of the Werewolf, obviously. And this time we have Oliver Reed himself. And that is a pretty good likeness of Oliver Reed. He's got a nice outfit. Looks like he's ready to reluctantly hit the town, go to a house of ill repute, and get himself in trouble. Oh, look at that. That's the kind of trouble we're talking about. That is a different sculpt. That is a new head sculpt for the werewolf. I don't like this one as much as that first one. I prefer the first head sculpt. The costume is a little different. I just think that first version of this figure is better all around. This is a new take on the werewolf character. It is not the same. He's paired up with Leon. The Curse of the Werewolf. Leon and the werewolf. That's not a sun. I guess that's a full moon. That's what the card art looks like. It's got that hand-drawn style that, you know, I said what I think of that. And it's depicting that poster that I like so much. That moment in the film. The art on the back is better. I mean, it's still that hand-drawn style, but I think that image is pretty good. That's from a famous publicity still, but it was also the basis of the US one sheet. And I think also the UK quad uses that too, doesn't it? I know the US one sheet is based on that image. They're both looking down, I guess somewhat disapprovingly at what's going on there. Kind of odd that you've got, it almost looks like a yellow sun in a daytime sky instead of a black night with a white moon. That fire definitely looks like the US poster with a fire in the background. It's a nice image. I just wish it were more professionally done. More like industrial, commercial illustration. But it's a nice image. I mean, that is a nice image. I would have preferred poster art, though, on all of these. And even back at the time this was made, you could easily use Photoshop to combine photos of Oliver Reed and the werewolf and poster art and photos from the movie and so on and so on. You could have done all that in Photoshop and had it all a little slicker. And of course now with AI tools, you could do it even quicker and easier. It's a nice set of two figures for sure. That is I would have preferred the older, the original style werewolf from the first series. I don't know why he was changed, But I do remember at the time everyone thinking that this was better. I remember everyone thought this was an improvement. I like the first one. But I really like that Oliver Reed. That's pretty good. So this is a nice, ambitious set of action figures, that 2-pack. Now, what came after that? I guess it was the Dracula one. Yeah, this is Dracula AD 1972. I think this art is an improvement. I think, let's just look at the back. Let's jump the gun a little bit. Look at the back. Yeah, I think you can see it's getting better. That's an improvement. The whole thing is an improvement. It's just more nicely done, more professional looking. So it's getting better. Still, it's that hand-drawn kind of look, but it's getting more polished. And that's a nice composition. That sums up the movie very nicely. And I think these are good portraits. Well, Christopher Lee, I think it's a pretty good portrait of him. I'm not sure about Cushing so much, but it's better. It's an improvement. I like the red texture and the way that's done. This is a different Dracula because it's AD 1972 instead of Prince of Darkness like the previous one. I think that Cushing's better than the Cushings we saw before. I think that's a better Cushing. Still not quite right, but better. I think that's an improvement on the other 2 Cushing figures. I'm not sure about that Dracula, though. Yeah, I think the other Dracula we saw was from Prince of Darkness. I think that was better. I like Cushing's. I like his outfit. He kind of has like a rustic look. I think doesn't he wearing like a leisure suit or something like that? It's set in this present day. I mean, it's 1972, so he's not wearing Victorian clothes. Well, this is a nice 2-pack, and I think the artwork is a step up from what we've seen as far as the original art is concerned. I think that's an improvement. The next one was Twins of Evil came next. I'm thinking I might have skipped. Some of these I just don't have the dates for them. Yeah, I don't think Twins of Evil was next. Let's look at Curse of Frankenstein. Also has that kind of a red color scheme. Okay, got a drink. I said okay. There's Curse of Frankenstein 2-pack. The Baron looks very similar to what we saw before. Different outfit, I think. Yeah, definitely a different outfit. But I don't know if that's the same head sculpt. I think that's different. I like him. He's got a nice head sculpt. Is that the same head sculpt as the first version? I'm not sure. But definitely the costume's different. He's got bandages, like a mummy. And that's what he's wearing when he first comes to life in the movie. He's in his tank, and he comes to life, and he gets out of the tank, and he rips his facial bandages off. He looks like that. Two nice figures. This is the back. I think that art is unintentionally comical. Let me look at that. So I'm not crazy about that art. It certainly makes an impression, that's for sure. It's very bold art. And to highlight that moment, even that is sort of unintentionally funny, that they highlight that moment. It's definitely very bold, arresting art. It makes a statement, but I think it's sort of unintentionally funny. The art on the front, I think, is better. It's moodier. It's more serious looking. Interesting that they've got, and the back it's got that fiery theme like the Curse of the Werewolf. Oh, almost said the dreaded word. Now let's look at Twins of Evil. When did this come out? 2018. So this is much later. I think when Distinctive Dummies announced Twins of Evil, everyone would have assumed it would be the two women, like that. I think that's what people were expecting. That, not those two. That's nice art though. So this is a nice image. I just wish it were done a little better. But the idea, the concept, the composition, everything is very, very nice. Definitely makes a strong statement. The execution needs to be a little better. I'm not as crazy about the art on the front. And here are the choices. So if you're going to make, well, this is a whole debate about Distinctive Dummies. I was about to say, if you're going to make Twins of Evil figures, I guess those are the two that would lend themselves more to action figures. But I'm not sure. Here's the Karnstein vampire. His cape, of course, is obscuring a lot of that, what looks like a really nice costume in there. But notice how it fits on him a little better than Baron Meinster's costume. Still a little problematic, but it's better. It's an improvement. Same with him. Now that's a pretty good Peter Cushing, isn't it? That might be the best Cushing sculpt we've seen so far. That actually does look like him. You're not going to see much besides capes on these two. What's his name again? Count Karnstein and Gustav Weil. Yeah, I don't know the character names. I've seen this movie, certainly. I mean, I've got it on Blu-ray, but I don't have the names memorized except for that last name, Karnstein, because there's Karnsteins in four Hammer movies. There's a Karnstein trilogy, and then there's Kronos, where the vampires are also named Karnstein. A New Era of Vampires, Unrestricted Terror. What number is this? 35 of 60. 35 of 60. It's a lovely set, but it kind of has the elephant in the room. If you're going to make Twins of Evil, why not make the Twins of Evil? Those two. Maybe I'll be surprised as I go through these, and there's something I forgot, but I don't think he ever made those two. Again, maybe I'll pull them out of the box and say, oh, I guess he did. But I don't think he did. And I know a lot of people were asking for those two and other female characters, like Lust for a Vampire, that I think she's also a Karnstein, and Ingrid Pitt, and so on and so on. I want to say, I thought maybe he made the vampire from Brides of Dracula, but I'm not sure. When I look at the later figures, I'll probably discover some things I had forgotten about. But there was sort of a little debate online about female Hammer figures. In theory, it seemed like a good idea. Like, naturally, you would want those characters. But in reality, at least early on, what would they have looked like? They would look like two little Barbie dolls. Just two weird little female characters with, some little fangs or some blood. It would have been hard to make just a little woman in a gown compelling as a Amigo-style action figure. So it sounds like a good idea, but I don't know that it would have really worked. Still, if you're going to make Twins of Evil, you really ought to make the Twins of Evil. If you're going to touch that film, then those are the characters you want to do. I don't know what year this came out. This is the Quatermass experiment. Professor Bernard Quatermass and Victor Caroon. And this is the Brian Donlevy Quatermass, which is my favorite Quatermass. I like the grouchy American Quatermass. I don't know what year this came out. I like this set a lot. I think that really looks like Brian Donlevy's Quatermass. Yeah, I think he nailed that likeness. I think he's going to start barking orders at me at any moment. I like his attitude. And the suit isn't puffy. See, he's learning. He's got a nice costume and it's not puffy on him. Well, maybe a little bit. And this poor guy, he's the one who's infected by the alien spores. And he's got his alien hand, his cactus hand. That's a good representation of the cactus mutated arm there. It's got little things sticking out of it. Ugh. I mean, it's almost a body horror movie. It's just, if you saw more of it, that's what it would be. It would have become a body horror movie. But you never really get a good look at it. At what's going on with this guy's arm. It's deliberately just kept in quick shots and shadow, and you do see the monster at the end, when the fully formed monster, after it's absorbed him and other animals. Those are good portraits of those characters, but they're sketches. They don't look like toy package art. I don't know what's going on there with that rocket. That's a gigantic rocket piercing the surface of a planet. Maybe that's from a poster. I don't know. Like I said, those are good posters. They capture those actors. They capture the characters. It's just not. It's not commercial art. That's what I want. I want commercial illustration on these things. Your mileage may vary. You might say, no, I like it just the way it is. I like this set. I think those figures are really good. Both of them really capture the characters. The sculpts are right on the money with those actors. Don't know what year that came out. So I really like that Quatermass 2-pack. Here's just a bonus. It just happens to be in the same box. This is a Kolchak, the Night Stalker 2-pack. We're not talking about Kolchak today. Well, we did kind of, I think, unless I cut it out. I might edit it out, but I did mention this Kickstarter semi-licensed Kolchak project. I'm not too crazy about it. Those are all the 2-packs. I do have a little friend here, but we'll save her. This is the last figure that Distinctive Dummies put out in the Hammer line. We'll just put her over there for now. Let me get these out of the way, and we'll try to continue with the final leg of this mission. Wow. Well, you saw me just a few seconds ago, but that was about an hour ago for me. Had to recharge the cameras and take the old Distinctive Dummies figures away, bring the new ones in. So, where do we stand here? Let's see. I don't know how many hours you've been watching this, but I've been shooting it quite a few hours now. We're going to talk about the next. You can even hear it in my voice. It's wearing me down. I'm like, oh gosh. I'm trying to get through this. The third series, if I'm not confused here, the third series. And I have him in a bag because he's got stuff. All of these are in bags like this. I just took them out ahead of time, took the bags away ahead of time. Except this one because it's got all this stuff. This series is the third series that came out in 2017, to the best of my knowledge, from the information I have. This third series came out in 2017, and then the next final fourth series was 2019. But here's we just saw Quatermass, another version of Quatermass. We saw the Brian Donlevy Quatermass. This is the André Morell Quatermass, and I had to look up his name, by the way. That's André Morell as Professor Bernard Quatermass. I thought Distinctive Dummies misspelled his name on one of these packages, but that's how you spell Quatermass. Quatermass, okay. Bernard Quatermass. Oh, well. Anyway. Look at him. So that's pretty good. That is a pretty good Quatermass. I mean, that's really good. Look at that. My hand's a little unsteady, particularly after all this time holding these things up. My arms are getting tired. That's a more steady. I was going to say it's more steady. Not really. Now look at the costume. He's getting Distinctive Dummies is getting a lot slicker with the costume. He's learning how to handle these layered costumes so they don't look too bulky. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe he's still a little bulky, but that costume is better. I mean, it looks better on him. Maybe it's just better tailored now. Maybe it's just a better design, but I don't know. He's probably still making a full shirt and everything. I don't know. But you have to use really thin material. And like this vest, is there a back to that vest? Why not make that part of the shirt? You know, that kind of thing. But just look at that. I mean, it looks really nice. That suit looks really nice. That doesn't look compromised in any way. That is poster art. Thank goodness we're back to poster art. On these individual figures in these waves, they all have poster art. And of course, I prefer the poster art. I don't like the homemade sketches. That's what's in the line. And we'll find out if they all have the same color on the back. I think they do. I think it was just that first wave that had different colors. That's too bad. I kind of like that. I wish they had kept that up. But you can get an idea of what we're going to be seeing pretty soon in this series. $40 of $60. Now, I am a Don Levy Quatermass fan. I prefer his version of Quatermass. I prefer the pig-headed, bossy Quatermass. He's mean. He's blunt. And if the Martians or the aliens are coming to take us over, that's the guy I want standing between us and the aliens. Not this more sensitive, thoughtful Quatermass. I want the mean, crabby, blunt, bad Quatermass. That's a Martian in there, a mummified Martian. And whoop. Ugh. And originally they came in these tubes. Now let's take a look at this, because I had to get a replacement Martian. Well, am I going to be able to look at it? See it coming apart in there, just like the ones in the movie. This is the Martian, and you can see he's broken. If I drop him, he'll break some more. It's a pretty good rendition of the Martians in the film. But it's just resin. And this is part of the problem with a custom toy. It's made of resin. Well, of course, a manufactured toy made for kids would never be made of a brittle material like this and have antennae like that, or any of this. It would be a pliable material, so you could take those antennae and go bend them and they wouldn't break. Although some NECA stuff, I don't know, some of that's pretty brittle. And that toy of this Martian, it was packaged in here, And then this was just in the bubble with the figure, and that's why it broke, because there's nothing to cushion it. And so I asked for a replacement, and I got one. And it's never been out of this bubble wrap. I can see he still has both his antennae. I'm using the plural of antennae. Well, I mean, it's an Iceland Martian, but I wish it was made of a soft material. It really needs to be. That kind of accessory needs to be rubbery. It needs to be made of a rubbery material. And this clamshell doesn't hold together very well. It wants to pop open. I wanted to keep the original one just because it's the one that actually originally came with the toy, so it's part of the history of the toy. Why not keep it? Alright, that's as good as that is going to get right now. Oh gosh, come on. That's as good as I can make it at the moment. Stick that back in here. Luckily, because it's a plastic clamshell, any tape or anything is not going to damage it. The artwork, like, oh. There's the other antenna. Put you in there. There it is at the bottom of the package. It'll be fine in there for now. Yeah, I like the Don Levy Quatermass. He just bosses everyone around. He's pig-headed. He's narrow-minded, and he just marches into a room and blah 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 blah, and starts giving orders. And he's kind of mean. And no one likes him. But if the aliens are trying to take over the world, I think he's the guy you want. And if you don't know what Quatermass is, it was Doctor Who before there was Doctor Who. There was a BBC serial, not the kind you eat, but like a continuing story, an episodic story. That, well, there were three of them. Three, originally, about this Professor Quatermass that headed a privately owned corporate space exploration company, and it started in the 1950s, and he shot a rocket up into space, and he was the first person to do that. He wasn't an astronaut, he was a scientist, but he ran the company, and he had a board of directors. He was very corporate about how he handled it, and the rocket came back. As we saw, there was that guy with an infected arm. He came back, one of the astronauts, infected with this organism that if it had not been stopped, it would have destroyed the world. And then in the second Quatermass movie, well, these were TV serials first. In the second serial, there's more of like an invasion of the body snatchers kind of a plot to replace important people in positions of power and establish a base. It was modeled off of a moon base, but establish a base on the Earth and convert people into food and all kinds of crazy stuff. And Quatermass finds out about it and stops it. And in the third movie, which is where that bearded Quatermass is from, we find out that Martians visited the Earth thousands of years ago or millions of years ago, and basically created the human race, and we've all got some Martian DNA in us that can be triggered and come alive, so to speak, and do terrible things. And Quatermass has to deal with that. So these were made into movies by Hammer. Started on TV, and then Hammer got the rights to them and made 3 movies. And then in the 70s, there was a 4th TV serial that was never made into a theatrical film. But Quatermass is this very eccentric scientist, and he starts off kind of mean and bossy, then he kind of evolves into a more thoughtful character, and by the 3rd movie he's hitting essentially Unit, like Doctor Who's Unit. It's essentially the same thing, but predating, I think, Unit on Doctor Who. So Doctor Who is like taking Quatermass, turning him into an alien himself, but keeping a lot of the other elements, especially the John Pertwee era, was very influenced by Quatermass when the Doctor was on Earth most of the time. And Quatermass has been referenced on Doctor Who, particularly there was a reference during the David Tennant era. There was a reference, Sylvester McCoy, I think his Dalek episode referenced Quatermass. So Quatermass, I mean, these are like Easter eggs essentially, but Quatermass, if you want to get down to it, Quatermass exists in the Doctor Who universe. I mean, the 2 references, I say that counts. Yeah, I know it's all kind of been fun, kind of wink wink, but twice they've referenced him or things associated with his universe as existing in Doctor Who. So he's canon. He's part of Doctor Who as far as I'm concerned. They've 2 references, 20 years apart. He's part of Doctor Who canon. And I think there was some plan at some point to bring him into Doctor Who, but they never did. Anyway, let's see. What are we going to do next? Let's save him. Now, I like this. This is the Mummy Shroud. This is another from the same 3rd series. That's really nice. You wouldn't think they could pull off this mummy. I mean, that must be very difficult. I wouldn't have expected them to be able to do it, but they really did. I mean, Distinctive Dummies and the designers, they really pulled off that mummy from that movie, The Mummy's Shroud. When you look at him, you know exactly, if you're familiar with Hammer, you know exactly what mummy that is. And he looks great. I mean, he looks like that mummy from the movie, which was based on a real mummy. I think it's in the British Museum. But they didn't just make that up. They based it on an actual mummy in the British Museum. So that was a really nice figure. This is Evil of Frankenstein. This is the monster from Evil of Frankenstein. And Distinctive Dummies made a nice 12-inch version of this. I think they did well on the 12-inch version. But this 8-inch version, I don't know about that. Not too crazy about this one. I think the feet are too small. That's a big problem right there for Frankie. And the head's too small and too narrow. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't capture that character. I'm trying to line this up. Get rid of the glare. It doesn't capture that character. His head's not boxy enough. It's too narrow. His feet are not big enough. His feet are small. Hands are small. It just, and I remember at the time when this came out, there were some complaints online. This was a swing and a miss. And that's too bad. I was looking forward to this character because he's kind of cute. And the 12-inch one looks pretty good. And my friend Matt made, I think he made an 8-inch and a 12-inch of this character. And his, of course, are great, as you would expect them to be. I just feel like it's not, of all the figures to not capture, this would seem like one of the easier ones to get. But they didn't do it. It just doesn't look right. You see Peter Cushing hiding back there. And of course that's from poster art or stills or both. So this one I'm not too crazy about, and it's too bad because I feel like he really could have been a very cute doll. One of the best in the series, but they just didn't bring it home. Didn't get him right. This is an extraordinary figure. That's Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter. That's easily one of the best figures in the entire collection. That likeness is perfect. His costume is perfect. And it really looks like something Mego would have made. It looks just like a vintage Mego figure. Maybe one of their Planet of the Apes humans, like from the TV series, the Planet of the Apes TV series. It kind of reminds me of those figures. But I can see Mego back in the day making something like this. And it also kind of looks like a NECA retro cloth figure, or a lot of other Mego style figures from the 21st century. But it's just great. I mean, everything, you can't fault this. This easily is one of the best, alongside that Curse of the Werewolf and the Yeti. I like those too, but this one's up there. And that is, I think that's a poster art. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Is it? Maybe it's not. I think it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. What poster, I'm not sure. The American one sheet for this is pretty boring, so it's not from that. That's a pretty good figure. He's not a monster. He's a vampire hunter. He's a swashbuckling vampire hunter. Unlike Van Helsing, which is a academic, professorial. Is that how you, is that the word professorial? You know what I mean. He's academic. Van Helsing's very academic. Captain Kronos is a man of action. He's going to punch the vampires, duel the vampires. He's an action hero in a period Hammer universe. And it's too bad that they didn't the film wasn't more successful. They didn't make more Captain Cronus movies. Their intent was to bring him into the present day, which I'm not too sure about that. I think I like him in that period, whatever century that was. They were going to somehow introduce time travel, or maybe he just lives forever and they bring him into the present day. I don't know about that. I'm glad they didn't do that, but I wish they had made more Captain Cronus movies. Now, so I can get these put away. We're going to look at the final series. And then we've got a couple stragglers at the end. Well, let's look at this. This is another mummy. So this series is from 2019. Almost coming to the present day, aren't we? We're heading up against a historic event. We're not quite there yet. The mummy's tomb. This is that mummy that's missing a hand. Well, I just lost a camera and I had to replace it. So I don't know what I was saying a second ago, but I'll continue with this mummy. Pro tip, as you're watching any episode, if my microphone suddenly jumps from cord inside my shirt to cord outside my shirt, that means all hell is breaking loose and I'm just trying to get the episode done any way I can. So that's the situation now. The cable is outside my shirt. So pay attention from now on. Go watch previous episodes and take a look at that and say, aha, he's having problems. The cord is outside the shirt now. Okay, where was I? Okay, I was talking about this mummy, right? This right here. What was I even saying? I was saying, let's see. I think this movie was actually the first Mummy sequel after the 1959 Mummy with Christopher Lee. I think this came before the Mummy Shroud. And this is the mummy that has one hand. Hammer had this severed hand prop that they kept using again and again. And I think it might have even ended up in other films too. And other studios' films, not just Hammer films. But I see that what I think is the same severed hand prop over and over in multiple films. What is the name of this mummy again? It's Ra-Entif? Ra-Entif. I like that Agatha Christie style font. I don't know if the movie poster had that kind of font, but I like its use on this card. I don't know if that's poster art or if it's just stills photos from the movie. He's pretty cool. And, you know, he looks like the character. It can't be easy getting this aged look. This weathered, aged, caked on look for the bandages. He's pretty neat. Now, we haven't seen the back yet. This is the fourth and final series. And I think I said this came out in 2019. Let's go on to this one. This is the Phantom of the Opera. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of glare because he has black clothes. Pretty nice costume, though. I was going to say it's not too bulky. It's a little bulky. Yeah, it's a little bulky, but not too bad. He's pretty nice, except for one glaring problem. That mask doesn't come off. That mask is molded to his head. is not a removable mask. Now the Mego Phantom, Mego did make this character, he does have a removable mask. He's packaged with the mask off, and you see his disfigured face. And then the mask is I don't know if it's rolling around the package or if I think it's taped on or somehow attached somewhere. But the problem, though, with the Mego one is the mask doesn't snap on. There's no way to attach the mask to the face. It has a mask, but you've got to use some kind of sticky, like that blue tacky stuff that you use to stick posters to the wall. I think in an online discussion it was suggested that that's what you should use to stick the mask to the figure's face, which is ridiculous. I mean, the mask should either have pegs on it that go into holes, or should have a clip, or should have an actual fabric band, or should have something. There should be a way to put the mask on the figure's head and keep it there and then take it off. It should have a removable mask, not just a piece of plastic that you have to hold up to the face. But between the two, a mask that doesn't come off at all versus a mask that it comes off, but there's no way to really keep it on, I think Mego is the superior figure, and it's the superior approach to have a disfigured head and then a separate mask. They just didn't quite stick the landing. They didn't have a way to attach the mask to the head, which is kind of weird. Needed a little extra engineering there. But this, the mask doesn't even come off. That's not so hot. It's too bad because it looks, otherwise the figure looks very nice. So it's too bad that mask doesn't come off, because I think that really knocks out the figure. I mean, it almost cancels it out. I think that's a deal breaker, to have a Phantom of the Opera where the mask doesn't come off. Though I say that, I've got Phantom of the Opera toys for the Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom where the mask doesn't come off, and I showed you those on a previous episode. All those masks are glued on. There isn't even a face behind the mask. But those are different toys. Those aren't action figures. Those are for a different audience. These are action figures. They should have action. The mask should come off. Here's another one that Mego produced, the reptile. Wow, look how that card is striking, isn't it? Just the figure, the card, the whole thing, it's all put together. It's really nice. And that is from Poster Art. Yeah, I don't know what poster. I think most of these are from French posters, but I'm not sure. That is the reptile. That's a nice likeness of her. Now the Mego one is also very nice. This one, the costume I think is more accurate. The original Mego reptile came in a black outfit, which is not accurate. Then they later issued it with a green gown. But I think this figure is probably more accurate overall. For one thing, it has a ponytail. I don't know if we can get a good shot of that. But she has a ponytail, and the character has a ponytail. The Mego one does not. The Mego reptile does not have a ponytail. But I do like the Mego head. I like that head sculpt. All of the Mego Hammer figures have sort of, slightly oversized heads, but that's good. That's the Mego aesthetic. That makes them look more doll-like, more toy-like, and more playful, and it gives them a softer look. This is more like a NECA retro cloth figure that has a, more properly in scale head, a little smaller. Pretty nice. Pretty nice figure. It's a minimal costume, but it works. It's accurate. I don't know if those shoes are accurate. Probably. I mean, they're so specific, red high heel shoes, that if there wasn't some precedent for them in the film, I don't think he would have used those. It's pretty nice. There's the back again. And the character's name is, I think it's pronounced Anna. Could be Anna. Anna Franklin. Anna Franklin. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I should watch it again sometime. And Plague of the Zombies too. Both of those movies, they're sort of sister films in the Hammer canon. Now we have a figure that Mego was going to make. They announced it. It was available to order, and I did order it. And then it was canceled. Well, before I go babbling about that, let's just show you the figure. This is the Gorgon, or how would you pronounce that in a Hammer style? Do they call it a Gorgon in the movie, or do they pronounce it more like Gorgon? I'll say Gorgon. Gorgon. That's how I would pronounce it. The American way to pronounce it. It's the Gorgon. And she's not Medusa. I think they say her name is Megara, but in Greek mythology, Megara wasn't a Gorgon. In any case, the character's name is Megara. Is it? No, it just is the Gorgon. Her name's Megara. She's not Medusa. I think that, yes, it's very accurate looking, but also I think it looks better than what's actually in the movie. It's sort of an idealized version of what you see in the movie, but it's pretty accurate to the look of that character and the actress playing it and the makeup and everything. It's pretty accurate. And I imagine that's a difficult likeness to nail down. And I've got bubble wrap in there because I imagine those snakes are very delicate. And, oh, I'm so tired I can't even speak. Those snakes are very delicate and would probably break off easily. Costume similar to the reptile. I mean, it's not literally the same, but it's sort of similar. That's a really nice likeness, though, isn't it? I mean, that really looks like the character. It looks better than the character. It looks better than what you see in the movie. Nice looking card. Nice colors. This whole series, this fourth series, just the look of the cards are very dynamic. I mean, every one, even the poor Phantom that we sort of disowned because of the mask. That looks nice. That looks nice. Let's do a little curtain call for these. That looks nice. That looks really nice. And this looks nice. I mean, that whole lineup, this whole series looks great. I mean, the only problem among these four toys is that mask. Aside from that, it's a perfect wave, this final wave of figures. I think that Martin and the company Distinctive Dummies, they ended things on a very strong note. Am I stepping on my microphone? They ended things in a very strong fashion. But they didn't quite end it. There was still a little bit more there. Let's get into that. He did some girl figures. Now, okay, so am I missing something? Because I've only got 2 of these girls. I thought he did a set of 4, but maybe not. This is Helen Kent from Dracula, Prince of Darkness, and it's even got the protective wrap on the bubble. See that? This has never been opened. That clamshell has never been opened. The bubble has some protective cellophane on the front of it. So I've never seen what that doll looks like. And this is the last figure that Distinctive Dummies put out. This is Alice from Plague of the Zombies. Same actress from The Reptile. She was the Reptile. Aww. It's obviously a very nice likeness. She's all appropriately gray. Which she was in the movie. Aw, poor dead girl. She's a zombie. There she is coming out of her grave. And these zombies in this movie, they're voodoo-style zombies. They're controlled by living humans. They don't have any agency. Not that zombies ever do. That's kind of what makes them zombies. But they're not Romero-style zombies. They're voodoo-style zombies. This was the last... Yeah, see, she's all gray in there. This was the last hammer figure that Distinctive Dummies put out. Not the last figure, but the last hammer figure that Distinctive Dummies made. Then this was the end of the Hammer series. Now, am I missing something? Were there a couple of vampires or something? Remember, I was wondering about the Twins of Evil. Wasn't there a vampire like from Brides of Dracula? Or am I making that up? Is that a Mandela effect? Because if there was, I'm sure I've got her somewhere, but I didn't see any other ones as I was looking through these boxes. And I know he never made Ingrid Pitt. I don't think he did. So I think he might have been planning 2 more, but I don't think he ever made them. I think, for one thing, these were 2020. Ooh, what happened in 2020? Especially Alice here. This figure was released right as COVID hit. Right as COVID hit. And let me see if I think I even have the month on here. No, I guess I don't. But I remember it was mid-2020 or spring of 2020. And I couldn't buy her right away because nobody knew if the world was ending or what was going on. It was like Night of the Living Dead for real. And I think because of a combination of things, I think because Mego started putting out their licensed Hammer figures, so you had actual Mego Hammer figures, and also because of COVID, I think those factors combined to squash any future Hammer figures, because Martin announced he was done with Hammer. He was finished with Hammer. There wouldn't be any more. I think the introduction of the Mego Hammer figures played a big part. And I wonder if he got feedback about, like with COVID, just no one knew what was going on, or they couldn't really, I didn't feel comfortable. I think other people didn't feel comfortable spending a lot of money on toys at that point, or even giving it the attention it needed to be interested and excited about a new toy release while everyone was dying or scared of dying or sheltered at home, or just all hell was breaking loose. So for whatever reason at that time, he decided to end the Hammer line, the Distinctive Dummies Hammer line, the Hammer series. And Alice was the last one he made. Now, just before Alice, he did this. And I've never opened this character, this figure. So, she's in there. There's her little hand turned around. Oh, let's open it. Let's see, how is this be this side? There's no tape sealing this, because the earlier ones had a piece of Scotch tape holding them shut. This opens a different way. Oh yeah, it does. It opens this way. It does open in a different way. That's the card. These are nice portraits. I mean, it's good artwork. This is good. This looks like her. But it's just not commercial art. It does look like good art. It's well done, but it's not commercial illustration. That's my complaint. On an action figure like this, I want to see a more commercial illustration style, more industrial style, like the movie posters. All that beautiful movie poster art, that's commercial illustration. Now this tape is getting kind of gummy. This is the first time it's ever been opened. And I think it says something that she was never opened because it was COVID. I wasn't even thinking about, I mean, I bought it because I'd been buying all of them up to that point, so I bought this too. But I had other things on my mind, so I didn't even bother to open it. I don't want to get her dirty. Yeah, I don't even want to pose that arm. Her arm's turned around the wrong way. That is a nice likeness. Now this, for a long time, I wasn't too sure about adding female characters to this because I just didn't think it was going to work. See how her arms turned the wrong way? I don't want to risk twisting that. But this is very well done. Very nice costume. Much better than some of these female vampires that, I don't know their name, but you know, White Elephant or whatever it's called, the company that partnered with Brian Heiler, and there's like 3 different companies combined making these Lincoln figures. So they've got this female vampire, and I've got one. It was sent to me. I didn't order it. It was sent to me. And you've seen it. It's got like a black outfit and the breasts are popping out. Yeah, but that's not really my thing. But this really looks like a proper female vampire. I'm afraid of dropping her. That's what a lost soul looks like. Aww. In this diaphanous gown, did I use that word correctly? Diaphanous. It's very well done. And I need to give her some cushioning or some kind of protection so she doesn't get messed up. I'll have to do that another time. Can we see her actually on the card? I can already see that it's going to be a problem keeping her from getting messed up because she just wants to knock all around in there. But that's what she looks like on her card. And I'm definitely going to have to get her an insert or some bubble wrap or something in there. Not this bubble wrap because I guess I could, but tape is getting kind of gummy. How old is this now? 6 years old. I suppose I could put this between her. Yeah, I don't want it. I don't want that gummy tape touching it. Well, that's the end of the road for Distinctive Dummies. Hammer, not the company. They're still making figures to this day. They've partnered with Paul Bearer Press on several figures, including a Coffin Joe, which I've got. And they don't really sell their website. Their website still says Distinctive Dummies, but they don't really market the figures under that name anymore. Now, that name, I like that name a lot. I think that name was part of the reason I started collecting it too, not just how much I liked the Butch doll, but I think that name was so sardonic because there was another company that's still around called Executive Replicas. Executive Replicas. And it was, I don't want to use adjectives to describe it, but it was trying to be a Hot Toys, Medicom, kind of a company sideshow, like the more advanced sideshow figures. It was trying to be a company like that. And it's still around. But that name, Executive Replicas, and everything, it has like an American Psycho kind of vibe to it, an Executive Replicas. Yeah, I never did like that name, Executive Replicas. What does that mean? So if you're some wealthy Wall Street guy, you've got some of those Executive Replica figures in your office, or I don't know. So the name Distinctive Dummies seemed to me to be a satire on particularly that name, maybe some other names too, but particularly that one, Distinctive Dummies. Because these are dummies, they're dolls, that they're distinctive, dollies, but it just seemed like kind of a smart aleck sort of a name, kind of taking the piss out of some other companies and the way they were marketing their products and the attitude that they were trying to appeal to. This was perhaps, I don't know, maybe a little more of a blue-collar kind of a approach to it than the executive approach. You know, if you're not the executive, if you're a few rungs down on the ladder, then you buy these. I think that was sort of kind of the idea early on when he came up with that name. I think he was kind of responding to the attitude behind some of these other companies, the way they were marketing their products and their names. So I liked the sardonic quality of the name Distinctive Dummies. I thought that was a nice name. So that also appealed to me. Oh, there's my baby. There's Billy stretching down there. Billy was doing very well for about a month, and then this week he had a little downturn for a couple of days, but he's back again. It's like every 6 weeks he has a little something going wrong, and then I worry and have to nurse him back, and he's doing okay now. You know, that's another reason why there's such a gap between last episode and this one. And I imagine it's going to take, I think it's going to take a couple of weeks to edit this. So it's probably going to be even longer than I imagine before you see this episode. I guess I need to wrap this up before I lose another camera. So, thank you for watching. That's the Hammer Distinctive Dummies story. I do believe this is an historic line because there had never been Hammer action figures ever. And this line answered that call. This line responded to that. People had wanted Hammer figures forever and couldn't get them. No company would do them. Finally, Hammer sort of got its act together with licensing, and that enabled Mego and then NECA to get into, and also Trick or Treat Studios to get into the Hammer business, merchandising Hammer. But now it seems to have stalled out, so I don't know what happened. Maybe they just didn't sell as much as people thought. I think it's somewhat too little, too late. We should have had Hammer figures in the 70s, certainly in the 80s or 90s. It's to finally, at this very late date, when action figures themselves are sort of, I don't want to say they're on the way out, but they're, as far as kids' toys, they're out. They're already out. The action figure market has changed so much that the Hammer action figures that we really wanted can't exist because anything made now, whether it's Mego or NECA, are aimed at adults. Or Caustic Plastic in the 12-inch Hammer, and Trick or Treat Studios has some 12-inch Hammer figures. They're all aimed at adults. So we still haven't gotten the kids' toys based on Hammer that many of us would have wanted as children or young adults. We'll never have those because the action figure market has changed so that kind of thing just doesn't exist unless it's maybe like Jurassic Park, Jurassic World. I think those are action figures, and they're aimed at, they seems to me to be, they're aimed at kids. But even stuff like Star Wars or whatever, even those are really aimed at collectors. Yes, they're in the toy aisle. I think it's mostly older people buying that stuff. So I think the moment has passed, and like the Mego Hammer figures are as close as we'll ever get even though those were aimed at adults, really. And the NECA figures are definitely aimed at adults, and the 12-inch figures from different companies are aimed at adults. So the moment has passed to get real, true kids action figures based on Hammer. But these were sort of like a what if. What if we did have Mego Hammer figures? What would they be like? And I think that was the mission. And we have a whole line, an extensive, exhaustive line of Mego style Hammer figures, much broader in scope than what Mego actually made. And generally, I think overall better in terms of design than what Mego made. Generally better, not only the toys, but the cards as well, the card art. Not in every case. But they are a fantasy, they're an illusion. They're not really toys, they're not licensed, they're not mass-produced. They're very distinctive dummies made in small numbers. It's a good, they are distinctive and they are dummies. And maybe maybe those of us who collect them are also distinctive dummies ourselves. Well, I don't know what else to say. I feel like I've reached the monster at the end of the book again. It's just me, lovable furry Grover. I guess I'll see you next time. I'm very tired. I've been at this for hours now. And we've got 2 more episodes to go. 2 more episodes. The next one will be a jiggler episode. It will be about something that's made of rubber and sometimes has this elastic string on it. It'll be a jiggler episode, and it'll be kind of long, I bet. And then we'll have one more episode to finish off the season, and I hope it's a good one. I hope we finish on a high note. If you started this on a Saturday morning, by now it must be noon or 1 o'clock. So how's your Saturday going if you're watching this on a Saturday when it premieres? I hope you're having a good day, and I'm keeping you company as you go on about your business on what I hope is a beautiful spring Saturday morning. I hope there's good weather. I hope there's good news. I hope the sky isn't falling. I hope you're in good health. And I hope this message finds you well. And with that, I will say good day. Until next time, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.